this is essentially a sales job, and you need to be ready for that. And that's something that, it was a little bit surprising to me still.
But actually, the reality is circumstance plays the cards, and suddenly you're free.
So I'd like to say that I'm helping companies navigate the road to revenues.
Welcome to BioPharma Unscripted with Marcus Metcalfe, bringing you real conversations with the leaders, innovators and challengers transforming biotech and pharma today.
Hannah, lovely to see you again. Thank you very much for agreeing to come onto the podcast. So as I've already indicated in my previous posts, I love interims, the whole concept of working as an interim or freelancer, and you are one. Particularly in the space that I do a lot of work in, which is market access and health economics. So thank you very much, first of all. Perhaps you could introduce yourself and just tell me, maybe the first question is why you are a freelancer, because I think that's something that comes up a lot in conversations with people that are thinking about it. But what has driven you to this path?
Sure, yes, and thank you so much for inviting me today. So I'm Hannah Kurth. I am a freelancer or interim consultant. I started my company this year, so it's all still quite new for me. I have about over two decades of experience in pharma and biotech, also a bit in medical device as well. Having worked at big pharma, medium pharma, and a couple of biotechs. And I had started my career in consulting. So for me, moving right into your question, why become a freelancer? It's something that I envisioned that I would do in the latter part of my career. So maybe, in the next decade, especially having already been a consultant, I know how it works, and said, okay, that could be a nice option when perhaps, I want that flexibility and so on. Yes. But what happened in my career was that my last company was acquired, and it really was a moment of reflection for me. Like, what do I want to do now as next steps? Do I see myself in another corporate role, or is this the moment to try freelancing and give it a go? And I did a lot of soul searching about that question. I even took some time off, which I highly recommend for those that are going through a sort of big career reflection, and worked with a coach even. And so I came to the conclusion that I'd like to try it out. So I did a lot of research with other consultants, what they like, what they don't like, and what you need to do when starting such an endeavor. So knew what I was getting into, and so that's essentially why I tried it. I thought if I don't try it, I'm going to regret it. So let's give it a go and reassess after 1 year, which I decided now I'm going to give myself 2 years and reassess and say, do you want to continue or move back into an employed role or do something else completely?
Yeah, okay. That is, I'm not surprised that answer you've given me. I think there's two, I hear both those, that they're the most common reasons. One is I see it as something I'll do maybe at the end of my career, where I've kind of got to the career climbing part of it. But actually the reality is circumstance plays the cards, and suddenly you're free and you think, well, okay, I've got a package, or I'm in a situation where I've now got the choice. Why not? What have I got to lose, really? So, and I think it's really interesting. So you actually spoke to freelancers that have done it, and to get the pros and cons. What did they say about the pros and cons of working as a freelancer?
Yeah, it's really interesting because you hear some commonalities when you speak to people, and then you hear different things as well. Certainly the pros are the flexibility, which is highly appealing to some folks.
Also for you or for the client?
Well, for yourself, but it's an important point that it gives flexibility to clients, especially biotech companies or companies that are in, they're in the ramp up stage, they're growing and they're not quite ready to make full-time hires. It does give them a lot of flexibility. But I was thinking mainly for myself, and that's what others have said as well. Also, the ability to work on different projects, so to work on a myriad of products, of companies, have, maybe broaden your network by having the different projects. So those are, for me, the main advantages. The disadvantages are, of course, that you have to go get the business. And
It's
so,
yeah, well,
yeah, someone told me, this is essentially a sales job, and
yeah,
you need to be ready for that. And that's something that, it was a little bit surprising to me still, and still challenging. You're selling yourself all the time.
yeah,
Whereas when you have an employed role, if you change every 2 to 3 years, you go through that process once in that time, whereas
yeah,
now
yeah,
it's all the time. So that's, I think that's a bit of the challenge.
yeah,
Also I don't want to say instability, but the kind of the unknown, and
mm,
not knowing when the next role will come, and then also
yeah.
managing your workload when you do have a project. Then, yeah, it's a bit like either you have not enough work or you have too much work,
Feast or
and
famine, yeah, yeah,
yes, making
absolutely,
choices between projects, and clients. So, but that uncertainty is something that people really need to be comfortable with, because
yeah,
it's also the same in biotech. When you work in biotech, it's that
mm,
uncertainty, that constant change. You need to be very agile and
yeah,
be comfortable with that. I think
yeah.
that's really important if you're thinking about becoming a freelancer.
Okay, okay, and that probably brings us to a good point. I mean, I think one of the common themes with our client base, is biotechs. Is I would say predominantly I work with smaller companies, mid-sized pharma as well, which I think is a lot of the space you focus in. But what is it about those kind of companies that you enjoy or don't?
Yes.
But why
Yes.
do you work with them? Yeah,
Yeah, no, I love biotech. Yeah,
yeah,
my last two companies were biotechs. I really enjoyed it. It's when you're in an employed role, it's the variety of things you're
yeah. It's
working
a
on, the
feel, isn't it?
access
I
to,
love it.
yeah, things are changing every day, every week. You have access to senior leadership. You're actually influencing the company. You make
Mm,
a really big mark on the company. So that I love. I in my freelance work, I've worked. Actually, I don't work solely with biotechs. I've also worked with big pharma,
okay,
also medical device. So it varies, but yes, I still love biotech. I think freelance work is ideally suited for biotech.
I would agree.
As I
Yeah,
mentioned earlier, it's when they're not quite ready to make key hires, but need that senior
yeah,
level expertise.
yeah,
It's a perfect option, and they can take the number of
yeah,
days that they need. So if you want, 3 days a week, 5 days a
yeah,
week, one day a week,
yeah,
you can try a person out to see if it's a good fit. That this is what I observe, and personally, I like it a lot. It gives you an opportunity
yeah,
to work with these smaller companies, to bring in your expertise that you've had over your career, and
yeah.
and to help them out in that journey.
Okay. Now, I think that's just got me thinking about two other areas I wanted to touch on. One was what scenarios are you coming in to help people out? Which, and you've said, one of those could be if they're not ready to hire, and you've got this flexibility. So that was one thing we just touched on. And the other thing was just actually about your expertise, because I know you for market access, pricing. Um, so perhaps you can just start with the first one, is what scenarios do you come in, that you can be useful, and also just specifically with you as Hannah, what is it you do that adds, value from an expertise point of view?
Yes. So certainly, when companies are in that kind of in between point where they may need or know they need someone full time at some point, um, but maybe don't need that full time person just yet. That's a scenario that I
Okay.
encounter. Um, it can be also companies that are undergoing internal change, a reorganization, where it's a little bit related to the hiring aspect, but also maybe they just don't have the right profiles
Okay.
in-house,
Yeah.
or they're not ready to make that, training and development for folks internally to move into such a role. That's where someone can come in and lend their expertise, and even I've heard of other consultants even doing some coaching and training of internal employees. So that's a scenario. Um, Also, I mean, certainly when companies are looking at new markets that they don't know. So I work with both companies that are European based that want to enter the US, and also European companies who want to enter Europe.
Mm.
So these are very typical scenarios in biotech, and also I would say health tech as well. So
Yeah.
that's where if you have the geographical expertise, that's really valuable for companies that are not ready to hire a full-fledged team in country, especially if they're not even sure that they're going to launch there yet. So
Yeah.
that's another scenario. And then lastly, I've also worked with some agencies as well, so helping out where they
Okay.
need an extra hand or they need some additional expertise
Yeah.
and want to add that as part of what
Yeah.
they're offering their clients. And so that's an interesting one as well because you can access some of the resources of the agency that you don't have
Okay.
necessarily as
Well,
a lone freelancer.
that's it. I mean, the actual, I've just obviously found this, but that sort of whole support network is just not there anymore. You haven't got finance
Yes.
person, account. You've got, a marketing person. I mean, I'm looking at the moment. I need some slides for ISPOR, and I need some help with that. The agency one's interesting as well because I guess from their side of things, they're pitching for business all the time, and you don't know what you're going to win, and you
Yes.
need that ability to go right. I've got Hannah lined up for that, if need be. I've also found sometimes some of the freelancers I work with, they're sometimes selected, as an alternative to an agency. If there's sometimes it just may be better to have a person that they know that to do if it's a specific, maybe it's a bit of pricing work or something. You might go out to a specific pricing. So there's that piece sometimes that comes up where you can be used as a sort of sole person agency in some cases. So, okay.
Yes, yeah, and that's it. It's interesting you say that because I was recently told that by a former colleague that because I was looking at my offering and trying to tweak it a little bit, and I mentioned as an example the market valuation. I actually worked 6 years in market analytics, so did a lot of forecasting, business development, market research, and that's something he said, yeah, that can be interesting because, some of the bigger agencies, the prices are just astronomical in
Mm,
cases, and even for uh, a medium or small size agency, it can be a lot for a small or mid-size pharma or biotech to handle. And felt that that's something that I could emphasize more
yeah. Okay.
as a single freelancer, as an
Yeah.
offering that can be more adapted to where they are and what their budget
Mm,
expectations are for that particular task.
yeah. Okay. And then the final bit was, I guess, the bit that is you in terms of your expertise. I mean, I kind of know this, but for the audience and people that might be watching, what is it that you do specifically? People want to contact you directly and potentially work with you. What do you do as a market access? Perhaps you just break it down into the areas that you are. This is a Hannah area.
Sure. Yeah, so I'd like to say that I'm helping companies navigate the road to revenues, and I know that can mean a lot of things, but certainly the bulk of my experience to date has been market access. And I've worked across all phases of market access. So I really started in HEOR and then moved more towards pricing and reimbursement, but I've also
Okay, that's
worked in
helpful.
evidence generation
Yeah.
but like I said, I've also worked many years in market analytics as well. So, I would say that, I'm a market access and commercial strategy consultant that can also assist with some of the hands-on tactics and activities that are needed to actually put the strategy in place. And I've worked across all phases of product development. In a way, I've worked backwards in terms of life cycle. So I started working
Right.
on a life cycle management activities for on the market products, and then move to launch, and then move to pipeline, and now am helping some startups. So I think having the launch experience and seeing what also happens thereafter in terms of
Yeah.
commercial activity helps to inform what you do early on in order to ensure that you're going to have commercial success. So
Yeah.
so I've worked across the whole life cycle stages for
Yeah.
products, and that's just me in a nutshell.
That's a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's that's often a theme with an interim you can cover on quite a broad front, but you've actually gone deep in a lot of these areas. It's not as if you're a generalist. You are in the sense you cover a lot of areas, but that you know these areas quite specifically as well because you worked in them, which lends itself to the work you do. That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, I know when we were talking before, there's lots of other areas we just thought, oh, that's interesting. That may pick up. So we may speak again on some of these topics. But for now, thank you very much. I love freelancers. I love talking about it. So, that there'll be more different opinions and personalities coming in the series. But if anyone wants to potentially find out more about what you do, obviously they can contact you. I'll leave that to you. But for now, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Marcus.
Pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to BioPharma Unscripted with Marcus Metcalfe. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Connect with us on LinkedIn to join the discussion and suggest future guests. Until next time, this is Marcus Metcalfe, bringing you the voices transforming biotech and pharma today.